This lesson is called Trail of Composers. We are going to discuss 3 composers from music history. 2 of them are from the Baroque time period of 1600 to 1750, and the third one is from the classical time period 1750 to 1820. The first one is our Baroque composer named Johann Sebastian Bach. Bach was born in 1685 and died in 1750. He lived in Germany his whole life. When he was only 10 years old, both of his parents had died, and he moved in with his older brother, Christoph. Christoph taught him many instruments, but the organ became his favorite. So Bach was known as a master of the organ. Throughout his life, he sang in choirs, he played for churches, he taught private lessons. He married 2 different times. His first wife passed away, and during that time, he also was the father to 20 children. Many of his children became great musicians. Bach is best known for his most famous piece, the Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Let's listen to a little bit of the fugue now. Bach became blind, most likely due to copying his own music in poor lighting. He also died of a stroke at the age of 65. Sadly, most of his music did not become worldwide popular until 100 years after his death. He was a great musician, and much of our music today would not be in existence had he not been such an entrepreneur of the organ. The next composer we're going to talk about from the Baroque time period is George Frederick Handel. Mr. Handel was born in 1685 and died in 1759. He was born in Germany as well. However, he ended up in England and actually became a citizen there, and that is where he died. Handel never married. Handel was very devoted to his church music and his religious beliefs. He spent a lot of time writing oratorios, and he also played the organ. One of his most famous oratorios you are most likely familiar with. It's called The Messiah. And the most famous piece from the Messiah is the Hallelujah Chorus. Listen and see if you recognize it. When Handel's first performance of the Messiah took place, the king attended his performance. The king felt so overjoyed that he stood up when they began the Hallelujah chorus part of the Messiah. When the king stood, everyone stood. So even today, it is still a tradition that if the Messiah is being performed, everyone stands for the Hallelujah chorus. When Handel died, he was buried in the Westminster Abbey in London. The next composer we're going to talk about was during the classical time period, and actually the latter part of his life rolled on over into the Romantic time period. He was born in Germany and he died in Austria. He is Ludwig van Beethoven. Beethoven was an extremely important part of our music history. Beethoven never married. He wrote many, many pieces of music, but he was most famously known for his 9 symphonies. His most famous symphony of the 9 was his 5th symphony. Listen and see if you recognize it. By the time Beethoven was 12 years old, he was already working as an organist. He had begun playing piano when he was very young. At the age of 4, his father began giving him lessons. His father was very strict on Beethoven and forced him to practice and would actually rap his knuckles if he made a mistake. He loved to play piano and organ. As I said earlier, he actually lived also during the Romantic time period of his life. The Romantic time period is when the piano became an extremely important instrument in our music history. One of his most famous piano pieces that he wrote was Für Elise. These 3 composers we've just covered are not the only composers from this time periods that we've discussed. However, their music made a huge impact on our music history. Can you identify a song that goes along with each of these composers? Bach and Handel from the Baroque period, and Beethoven from the Classical period.